The stage 3 tax cuts are going to increase inequality, and the capital gains tax system already causes inequality. So removing those sources of inequality would by definition make Australia a more equal society.
This question's about the Labor Party's decision to dump their reforms to negative gearing and the capital gains tax discount, and the fact that they're no longer going to try and repeal the stage 3 tax cuts. Is this going to have an impact on the budget and the economy?
Well, of course it is, in some sense, but let's be clear, the Labor Party are in opposition at the moment. The current government we've got has legislated what are called stage 3 tax cuts, which are big income tax cuts, particularly for people earning over $200,000 a year.
Yeah, they get about $9,000 a year if you earn more than $200,000 a year.
Very big tax cuts if you're earning over 200, and this will kick in a couple of years' time. Now, Labor went to the last election saying that they were opposed to these big tax cuts, and Labor also went to the last election saying they were worried about capital gains tax discount. So basically, if you buy and sell shares and you make a capital gain, or you buy and sell any asset and you make a capital gain, you pay less tax on that, a lot less tax than if you go to work and earn the same amount of money for working 40 hours a week. Does seem a bit weird. Anyway, Labor went to the last election saying they wanted to get rid of those things and spend more money on a range of services. They've just announced that they're no longer opposed to those things. So that's going to have zero impact on the economy because Labor are in opposition and these policies are already in place.
Yep. What
we need to think about is, well, what does this mean in the future? If Labor won and they did these things, what would that do? Well, you know, I guess Labor's saying, why don't you ask us after we win the next election? But to be clear, the stage 3 tax cuts are going to increase inequality, and the capital gains tax system already causes inequality. So removing those sources of inequality would by definition make Australia a more equal society. Labor's obviously made the political calculus that they won't be in government to do anything if they can't do that. Now, I don't know, as an economist, I can only say, what would it do to the economy? Well, if we got rid of those tax concessions, it'd reduce inequality and probably make the economy grow faster, because that's what the data says.
We know that economies that are more equal grow faster than economies that are less equal.
Yeah, but we're talking about what the opposition might do if they're in government in a few years' time. So this change has no impact on the economy today, but if they got in and did what they said they were going to do, we'd have a more equal society. And if they use that to spend more money on, well, I think they were talking about free cancer treatment and free childcare, those services, again, would create a lot of jobs and create a lot of economic benefits. So, yeah, here we are in Australia, stuck with the coalition stage 3 tax cuts for the foreseeable future, stuck with a capital gains tax regime that's very good for wealthy people and delivers nothing for people that don't own any assets.
Yeah, and I'd just like to pick you up on that. So we don't tend to tax wealth particularly well in Australia.
Oh, well, depends on your definition of tax it well. We don't tax it at all, which if you've got a lot of wealth, maybe that's the way to go.
So maybe we just need to have a quick look, and this is our first graph, about actually what we do tax. So this is a pie chart that breaks down all taxes. So this is not just federal government taxes, this is also local and state government taxes.
So what do we got here? Biggest chunk?
The biggest chunk is individuals.
So this is mostly income tax? Yep. And here?
We have profits.
So company tax?
Yep.
Yep.
Payroll,
yep,
which is basically income tax but paid by companies.
Yep. Property?
Property, so
what's that mean?
10%. So that's property both in terms of rates that and sort of stamp duties and things like that on that kind of property, but it's also transaction taxes. So it's not just property housing, but also property things you own.
But to be clear, in Australia, if you've got a $10 million house and then you sold it for $15 million, that's $5 million capital gain straight in your pocket, entirely untaxed. So we do tax property, but we don't tax capital gain on the family home.
And finally, goods and services. So that's not just the goods and services tax, that's also things like cigarette tax, alcohol, excise on fuels and things like that.
Right.
About a quarter. So when we look at that and we think, well, how much of that is actually wealth taxes?
I can't see wealth up there.
Well, the property bit is probably the closest it gets.
Yep.
So, you know, the rates you pay on your house, you know, the bigger and more expensive the house is, the larger your rates are going to be. That's a sort of property tax.
And we have some capital gains tax in Australia. We don't have a wealth tax, but
Yep.
when you sell some of your wealth, you pay some tax. Is that captured in profits?
That's captured in
individual income
Yep.
tax.
So, but again, we pay it at half the rate. So if you make a capital gain and it is subject to the capital gains tax, you pay half as much tax than if you earn it in any other way. So if you earn it with labour, or you earn it through profit, or you earn it through interest, you know, the bank gives you interest on your bank account, you pay your full marginal rate. For some reason, capital gains is entirely special and we pay it at half the rate.
Wow. So the people who have the most wealth make the biggest capital gains and they pay the lowest rate of tax.
That's exactly right.
What an accident. How did this happen?
Yep.
So, but in other countries, we'd see a big wedge up here for wealth taxes.
That's right. So other countries around the world,
sort of communist regimes like Donald Trump's United States
Yep.
of America, Boris Johnson, well known.
UK,
Yeah.
so they actually tax
Out to destroy
wealth.
capitalism.
Out to destroy capitalism. That's what America's all about.
Some say.
They actually tax wealth better. And as for some reason in Australia, we've just decided that that's not what we're going to tax. And the problem with that is that wealth is the greatest driver of inequality. So over time, if we look at income distribution versus wealth distribution, we see that wealth is even more concentrated than income is.
So a small number of people have a very large amount of wealth.
Yep.
And their concentration of wealth is even more skewed than than income.
That's exactly right.
Right. So not having a wealth tax in Australia causes inequality.
So these stage 3 tax cuts are pretty enormous. I think recent modelling that came out said over the next 10 years they're going to be over $180 billion.
Wow. That'd cause a bit of a deficit, wouldn't it?
That might. What do you reckon? How is that going to impact the budget?
Yeah, look, I call this the right-wing ratchet. I mean, what happens is conservative governments get in and they cut taxes whenever they get the chance. And then when the economy slows down and someone discovers there's a big budget deficit, they go, oh no, we've got a deficit. I'm going to have to cut welfare spending.
But wait, didn't you cut the taxes?
Unrelated, Matt.
Unrelated. Sorry,
so
my
that's
mistake.
so that's the right-wing ratchet. When you get the chance, when times are good, cut taxes on your friends, and when the economy slows down and the budget deficit blows up, cut spending on your enemies. And this is a decades-long international strategy. You know, we saw Donald Trump get in enormous tax cuts, and no one worried about the budget deficit when he did that. Same in the UK. Cut taxes when times are good, mainly they go to high-income earners, and then when people worry about the budget deficit, it's always, oh, gee, we're spending.
We've got a spending problem.
Oh, I've got a spending problem. So yeah,
healthcare spending, it's unsustainable.
So I think the real problem here we've now got with stage 3 is you've got the coalition who introduced stage 3 tax cuts saying, don't worry about it, a booming economy will pay for it. We've just gone through the biggest recession in modern history, and I went, oh, still fine.
It's still okay, it's great.
Don't worry about it. Labor's now said, oh, well, you know, the government's introduced these stage 3 tax cuts, so be it, moving on. But what we need to realise in 2, 3, 5 years' time, we're going to have to come back to the debate about revenue. Whether we come back to stage 3 tax cuts, whether we come to, is it time for a pollution tax or a wealth tax, time will tell. But every time governments introduce these big tax cuts, understand they're causing budget deficits in the future. So when that deficit shows up, we all have to remember what caused it, the tax cut, not pay attention to who they're saying we have to cut spending on to fix it. So that's the right-wing ratchet. Do you think tax cuts for high-income earners are unfair? You're not alone. Share this video with a friend, spread the word about what's really going on in Australia's tax debate. It's the last thing the government expects you to do. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, AustraliaInstitute.tv.